Have you ever scrolled through your feed, seeing people posting about spontaneous weekend trips to Paris or flashing their new Tesla, and thought to yourself, where do I actually fit in this picture of wealth? Maybe you've stared at your bank balance late at night, wondering if you're doing better or worse than people your age. Or maybe you've heard phrases like middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy tossed around like everyone knows exactly what they mean. But deep down, you realize you don't. Because no one ever tells you the real numbers behind those labels. Well, today we're going to change that. Because this isn't just another How Rich People Live video. This is about you. About finding out exactly where you stand on the American wealth ladder. Not in vague ideas, but in real numbers that reveal the truth about who's rich, who's middle, and who's struggling to get by. And I'll be honest, some of these numbers might surprise you. Some might even make you feel a sense of pride for how far you've come. But others might be a wake-up call that changes how you look at money forever. Welcome to Mike Compound, the place where we break down wealth, income, and investing in a way that actually makes sense. If you're tired of guessing whether you're financially ahead or behind, hit that like button. Because what you're about to hear might completely reset your perspective on wealth in America. Now, when you think of being wealthy, what picture comes to mind? A person with a mansion and a garage full of luxury cars? Someone who never has to check their account balance before buying something? Maybe that neighbor who somehow takes 3 vacations a year and still seems relaxed all the time. Here's the surprising part. The reality of American wealth distribution looks nothing like what most people imagine. Movies, social media, and even financial influencers have painted this illusion that wealth is about visible luxury. But when you look at the actual numbers, the truth is completely different. And understanding those numbers isn't just about curiosity, it's about direction. Because if you don't know where you stand, how can you know where you're going? Think about it. If you're trying to lose weight, you check your stats. Your weight, your diet, your exercise. If you're trying to get better grades, you compare your scores to the class average. Money works the exact same way. When you know where you are on the wealth scale, every decision, from how you spend to how you invest, becomes clearer. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the actual net worth numbers that define the economic classes in America, from the bottom to the very top. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where you fit and what it takes to move up. Let's start with something that might blow your mind. According to the Federal Reserve, the median American household net worth hit $192,900 in 2022, a massive 37% increase from 2019. That's the biggest jump since the Fed started tracking modern household data back in 1980. Sounds good, right? Almost too good. But here's where things get weird. While the median net worth, that's the middle number, sits around $193,000, the average net worth in America is over $1 million. To be exact, $106 million. Pause for a second and really let that sink in. The average is more than 5 times higher than the median. That's like saying half the country is shorter than 5'6", but somehow the average height is over 8 feet tall. It doesn't add up. Unless you realize that a small number of people are so incredibly wealthy that they pull the average way up. And that's exactly what's happening. The concentration of wealth at the very top is so extreme, it distorts the entire financial picture. Here's how wild it gets. The top 1% of households hold nearly 32% of all wealth in the United States. Think about that. 1 out of every 100 families controls a third of everything valuable in the country. Every dollar, every property, every investment, every asset. Imagine a party with 100 people. 3 of them walk in and immediately grab 1/3 of all the pizza, drinks, snacks, even the furniture, and leave the rest for everyone else to fight over. That's how American wealth works today. And these aren't just abstract numbers economists argue about. These wealth gaps define real life. They decide what neighborhoods you can live in, what schools your kids go to, whether you can take a vacation or have to pick up a second job. That's why understanding these boundaries matters, because they shape your life, even if you never think about them. Now, the Federal Reserve's data splits Americans into distinct financial classes, each representing a different level of financial health, opportunity, and freedom. At the bottom are those barely surviving, the lower class. Above them are the lower middle class, working hard but constantly on edge. Then the true middle class, holding the American dream together. After that comes the upper middle class, the group that many think is rich, but actually isn't there yet. And finally, the upper class in the top 1%, where wealth becomes something entirely different. Money doesn't just buy things anymore, it creates more money. But before we go climbing this ladder, let's pause for a reality check. Understanding these levels isn't about judgment or competition. It's about awareness. Because once you know which class you're in, you can start seeing why you're there and what levers you can actually pull to move higher. That's what separates people who stay stuck from those who break through. It's not luck, it's not inheritance. It's knowing the game, seeing the rules, and playing them better than everyone else. And the first step to doing that is knowing where you stand. So let's start from the bottom of the financial pyramid. The people with the least, and the ones who face the hardest uphill climb of all. Let's start from the bottom, the lower class, often called the poverty class. This is the group with the most limited financial resources. If your net worth falls somewhere between $0 and $16,900, you're technically in this category according to the latest data from the Federal Reserve. The median net worth for this group? Just over $6,000. That's less than the cost of a single vacation or even a used car. And yet for millions of Americans, that's all they have to their name. Now, before you feel sorry for everyone in this category, remember, net worth isn't permanent. It includes people of all ages and life stages. A 22-year-old college grad with student loans might have a negative net worth right now, but they're obviously not destined to stay there forever. Same goes for someone recovering from a divorce, medical bills, or business failure. Life hits hard, and net worth can fluctuate dramatically depending on timing and circumstances. But what truly defines the lower class isn't just a number, it's the daily struggle. It's the feeling of living paycheck to paycheck, always one unexpected bill away from financial disaster. No emergency savings, no investment accounts, sometimes not even a stable income. When the car breaks down, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a crisis. When the rent goes up, it's not frustrating. It's terrifying. Because for people in this group, money isn't just numbers in a spreadsheet, it's survival. And here's the cruel irony. When you're poor, everything costs more. You can't buy in bulk to save money. You can't afford large deposits to get better housing rates. You don't qualify for the lowest interest loans. If you qualify for loans at all, it's expensive to be poor in America. And that's what makes climbing out of this class so difficult. Now let's move up one level, the lower middle class. Here, things start to look a little more stable, but far from comfortable. This group's net worth typically falls between $16,900 and $43,760, with a median around $61,000. They're the skilled workers, service employees, office staff, and small business owners who keep the economy running. They might own a modest home, have a small retirement plan, and a bit of emergency savings. But financial security, it's still fragile. These are the people who often make too much to qualify for government aid, but not enough to feel safe. They live in a narrow space between progress and pressure, where every financial decision matters. A broken appliance means debt. A medical bill means cutting back on groceries. They can't afford big mistakes because one bad month can erase a year's worth of effort. From the outside, it might look like stability. But inside, it's a constant balancing act. A daily effort to hold everything together just long enough to move forward. This group represents something important, hope mixed with risk. They've climbed out of poverty, but the ground beneath them still shakes. And that's why understanding how to move from this level to true financial stability is so critical. Because the gap between getting by and getting ahead isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in discipline, decisions, and knowledge. So the next question is, what does it look like when someone finally breaks free from that fragile balance? When they step into what most people think of as the American dream? Now we reach the part of the ladder where most Americans believe they belong, the middle class. It's the group often called the backbone of the economy, the one that symbolizes stability, progress, and the classic American dream. According to the data, the middle class includes households with a net worth between $58,150 and $169,420 and a median around $145,200. At first glance, that might sound comfortable, and in many ways it is. This is the tier where people typically own their homes, contribute regularly to retirement accounts, and can afford modest vacations or upgrades without falling into debt. They can breathe a little easier, not because they're rich, but because they're not constantly worried about the next bill. They've moved past the survival stage and into the stability stage. These are the families with a plan, saving for their kids' college, paying off their mortgage, maybe investing in an index fund or two. They've built habits that keep them safe from financial chaos. But even within the middle class, there's a wide spectrum. Someone near the lower end might still feel stretched, every expense carefully calculated. Someone near the upper end might have breathing room, some flexibility, even a taste of freedom. The middle class is where discipline meets opportunity. They're not living paycheck to paycheck anymore, but they're also not wealthy enough to stop thinking about money altogether. They represent what most people imagine when they picture financial success, a life that feels secure, even if it's not luxurious. And yet the middle class faces a quiet danger. Inflation, rising home prices, and stagnant wages slowly chip away at their comfort. They're saving, yes, but sometimes not enough. They're investing, but not always strategically. And the dream of true freedom, of not needing to worry about money, still feels just out of reach. Now let's climb higher, to the group that most people believe are rich but actually aren't quite there yet, the upper middle class. This category includes households with a net worth between $500 and $2 million. If that's you, congratulations, you've entered what financial planners call the mass affluent. It's here where the line between comfortable and wealthy begins to blur. Doctors, engineers, managers, small business owners, these are people who've built strong careers and solid incomes. They drive nice cars, live in good neighborhoods, and max out their retirement accounts without breaking a sweat. And yet many of them don't feel rich at all. Why? Because of something called lifestyle inflation. It's what happens when your income rises and your spending quietly rises with it. That used car turns into a new luxury SUV. The occasional restaurant dinner becomes a weekly ritual. The apartment becomes a bigger house with a bigger mortgage. Over time, every raise and bonus gets absorbed into a more expensive lifestyle, leaving you with the same level of financial stress you had years ago, just with nicer stuff. These people even have a nickname in the finance world, Henrys, high earners not rich yet. And that's exactly what they are. They make great money, but they're often trapped in golden handcuffs, tied to jobs and lifestyles they can't afford to walk away from. Still, the upper middle class does a lot right. They tend to be disciplined savers and investors. They understand the value of diversification, often owning both their home and other assets like stocks, ETFs, or even rental properties. They also think strategically about taxes, estate planning, and long-term returns. Because once you start accumulating real wealth, the game shifts from earning more to keeping more. But despite all their success, many in this group still live with quiet pressure. They're too rich for help programs, too busy to enjoy their success, and still not wealthy enough to be financially free. They've reached the gate of wealth, but not yet the land beyond it. And that's where our next level begins. The upper class, where money stops being just security and starts becoming power. Now we step into the territory most people dream about, the upper class. This level begins at around $265 million in net worth. At this point, you've officially entered the world of wealth. But even here, there are layers. And what people imagine about the rich often misses reality completely. If your net worth is between $2.65 million and about $5.8 million, you're in the lower tier of the upper class. You're wealthy by almost any standard, yes, but you're probably still working, still budgeting, still making choices about how to allocate your money. You can afford luxuries, a beautiful home, vacations, private schools for your kids, but your life still runs on structure. You can't just stop and let the money manage itself. You still have to play the game. The next level, though, that's where the rules change completely. According to the latest data, to make it into the top 1% in America, you need at least $5.8 million in net worth. But depending on who you ask, that number can vary. Some sources put the threshold closer to $10 or even $12 million. Why the difference? Because measuring extreme wealth is like trying to measure fog. The higher up you go, the harder it is to track. Markets move, assets shift, valuations fluctuate. But one thing is certain, once you hit the top 1%, you've crossed a line most people will never reach. At that level, your money itself becomes the worker. Your investments, your assets, your businesses, they generate income faster than most people earn it. It's no longer about earning a paycheck. It's about managing an empire. Someone in the top 1% might earn more from a single year of market gains than the average person makes in a lifetime. Their investment returns could fund a middle-class lifestyle for multiple families, indefinitely. But even among the top 1%, there's another level, the ultra-elite, the top 0.1%. To join this group, you'd need a net worth of roughly $62 million or more. These are the people who own companies, not just stocks. They have private equity stakes, hedge funds, venture capital portfolios, and exclusive investment vehicles that require millions just to enter the room. They don't look for opportunities. Opportunities come to them. When your wealth reaches that level, your financial life operates on an entirely different planet. You don't think in terms of monthly budgets, you think in decades. You don't ask, how much can I save? You ask, what legacy will I leave? And here's the most fascinating part. The gap between classes gets wider the higher you go. The difference between the middle class and upper middle class might be a few $100,000. But between the upper class and the top 1%, the gap is millions. And between the top 1% and the top 1%, tens of millions. It's exponential, not linear. Each step up the ladder is 10 times harder and 10 times more exclusive. And yet even the wealthy aren't immune to comparison. Someone with $5 million feels rich until they sit next to someone worth $50 million. Someone with $50 million feels powerful until they meet a billionaire. Perspective never stops shifting. But perhaps the biggest illusion is thinking that money alone equals happiness. Because the truth is, once your basic needs and long-term security are covered, the rest doesn't automatically make life better. It just gives you more options. And sometimes, more options mean more complexity. Still, one thing remains true across every level. Wealth gives you time. Time to think, to choose, to live on your own terms. And that, more than any number in your bank account, is the real definition of financial freedom. But before we wrap this up, there's one more layer to the story. A twist most people completely overlook. Because how far your money takes you doesn't depend only on how much you have. It also depends on where you live. Here's something most people never think about. Wealth doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. A $2 million net worth might make you feel like royalty in a quiet town in the Midwest, but in Manhattan or San Francisco, it might only buy you a modest apartment and a decent car. That's the power of geography, and it changes everything. In Connecticut, you'd need to earn over $1 million per year just to break into the top 1%. But in West Virginia, that same milestone drops to around $416,000. The cost of living, housing, taxes, they all shift the definition of what wealth really means. Some people spend their whole lives chasing higher salaries in expensive cities, not realizing they could live better with less somewhere else. Others stay in those high-cost areas because they love the lifestyle and opportunities. But that choice comes with a price. Understanding this trade-off is crucial, because wealth isn't just about how much you have, it's about what that money can do for you where you are. So where does all this leave you? Whether today's numbers made you feel proud or maybe a little uncomfortable, remember this: these categories aren't permanent. People move up and down the financial ladder all the time. And more often than not, what determines which direction you move isn't luck. It's behavior. The difference between staying stuck and breaking through usually comes down to a handful of consistent actions. Spending less than you earn, investing early and often, staying out of toxic debt, and learning the game instead of guessing. But the single biggest mindset shift, the one that separates those who look rich from those who become rich, is understanding the difference between showing wealth and building wealth. Social media tells you to buy the image. Real wealth is built quietly, in index funds, real estate, and compound interest that works while you sleep. Remember, even billionaires like Warren Buffett still live below their means. He bought his house in 1958 for $31,500 and never left. He knows something most people forget. Money isn't for showing off, it's for freedom. So whether your net worth is $5,000 or $5 million, the path forward is the same. Spend wisely, invest consistently, and let time and discipline do their magic. Because wealth isn't a destination, it's a process, one you can start today.